Welcome, Chosen One.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another Gwent video, number 2 out of 3 that I want to make today. This one's going to be shorter though. I just wanted to quickly talk about Portal and the change that was announced to it yesterday. I see a lot of people really dislike this change, and I myself like it. And I just wanted to quickly talk about that. I'm going to try to keep this as non-rambly as possible. You know, just drop some sick facts and then be out of here, I guess. But yes, Portal is going down to 12 provisions, but now it will only summon one 4-provision unit from your deck to the left, and then after 3 turns it will summon another one to the right, instead of summoning, you know, one on each side right away. And I see a lot of people thinking that, oh, why this change? Portal didn't see a lot of play, why nerf it? And they're saying it's dead now. And, you know, while I do think that 12 provisions may still be a bit expensive, and it should maybe go down even to 11, other than that, I love this change, and I'm just going to quickly tell you why. There may be, I know there are a lot of new players, and I think a lot of new players are watching my videos, and aka this video. So you may not have been around during the early days of Portal, so this will be kind of like a history lesson, Gwent history lesson. And I mean, my goal here is to just help anyone who maybe just doesn't quite understand why it's being changed, and why this change, you know, is good, you know, why I like this change. Just try to help people understand. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you understand it just on your own accord, especially if you were around during the time when Portal had its heyday. But yeah, Portal came out in Crimson Curse, which was March 2019. So the card has been around for quite a while. I think it cost 12 provisions when it came out, and, you know, it summoned a random 4-provision unit on both sides on deploy immediately, the way it does now. And the card was really good. The card was really good. Now, part of the reason that it's fallen off in popularity, I think, may just be that we got access to more thinning. But the main reason was a massive change to the game that was induced by Portal existing. There were a lot of cards, a lot of 4-provision engines that, when pulled 2 at a time with Portal, was really good. Like, you know how there's like a whole meta deck, pretty good meta deck, called Revenants, where what they do is they play Redanian Archer and then immediately spawn another Redanian Archer with mobilization. Well, we had a very similar thing going with Portal. There were a lot of engines, 4-provision engines that had order, damage unit by 1, charge 1, and then gain a charge whenever, you know, this thing happens. Lyrian Arbalest used to cost 4. Elven Swordmaster, it doesn't have charges, but it has a cooldown. Getting 2 of those was pretty much, you know, 1 ping a turn. And just the extra reach and the damage output. You know, damage is better than boosts in Gwent. Like, damage a unit by 1 is better than boost the unit by 1. Especially in terms of order effects. Because it gives you reach on your removal. Like, it lets you... Like, a 1 damage ping lets you kill the beast with an Alcer's Thunder. Which is normally... It's a card you really want to kill, but bronze removal doesn't quite do it. But just a 1 damage ping can do it. And then, you know, having 2 damage pings a turn, and being able to sometimes protect them, and get greedy and save up the charges, it was a pretty big deal. There were a lot of strategies revolving around using Portal to get a couple of really good engines. It wasn't just pinging engines, not just damage engines. Nausicaa Sergeant was also one, which was then nerfed to 5 provisions, which I'll get into. But yeah, Portal was really good. because it had so many amazing targets. And then they nerfed it to 13 provisions. That wasn't quite enough. And then they took a whole bunch of 4 provision cards and bumped them to 5 provisions. Some of them at least got power buffs to make up for this. But look at Lyrian Arbalest, it didn't even get that, it just went up to 5 provisions. The card hasn't seen play ever since. Like there were a lot of cards, I think across all factions, maybe not Skellige, because I don't think Skellige had that many 4 provision engines. They still don't. But across most factions, 4 provision engines were nerfed to 5 provisions. Some got power buffs to compensate. Some didn't. Almost all of these cards became unplayable. Like the existence of Portal made so many cards unplayable. Just because summoning 2 of them at the same time was so strong. And you know, that leads us to this change. Now it only summons 1 at first, and the opponent can deal with it. It's easy to deal with 1. 1 4 provision unit, easy to deal with, no problem. And you know, it will eventually get you another one. And it's not a worthy heatwave target, so it will happen. And if you open with this, there are enough turns in round 1 to pull this off. And of course in later rounds, it shouldn't be a problem at all. You'll still get the 2 thinning, you'll still get your 2 engines. And the turn the second one comes out, if you play another engine that turn, you will have gotten 2 engines in 1 turn. You will. And, you know, all the power that comes with that still exists. It's still possible with Portal. But this is just a way to limit it from being such a massive opener. Give the opponent more time to react, to respond. And, you know, obviously, the engine, because you use this with engines, but the engines that comes out after 3 turns, obviously will have missed 3 turns. So it'll be worth 3 less points than the first one. So that's just also a nice way to, like, balance it out. And I know, like, Portal right now is mostly used in crime decks and assimilate decks, neither of which needed a nerf in any way. But it still works in those decks. Mostly the same way. A little bit weaker, but you know, it gets a provision buff, and I think it probably will get another one, unless it ends up being really playable now, in which case, good. We're all wrong. In a good way. But I think it still could use another buff. It'll go down to 11. And at 11, I mean, you have to think about the effect here. It still does what Portal does. It still thins your deck by 2. It still allows you to, at some point during the match, establish 2 engines in 1 turn. It's still pulling out 2 of your weakest cards that you often prefer to not have to play. It still thins them out of your deck in a tempo fashion. And that's the brilliance of Portal. That's why I think this is still a good card with a very good effect. Like, thinning your deck is one thing, but thinning your weakest cards out of your deck, improving your later draws, and also doing it in a way that provides you with tempo. And even if you have to wait 3 turns, yes, the immediate turn won't be tempo, but then 3 turns later, you will have tempo, and Portal will have done what Portal has always done. It thins out 2 of your weakest cards in a high tempo fashion, thinning your deck, improving your draws, letting you set up multiple engines in a turn. It still does what it does. It's just its effect is weaker because its effect was limiting design space. Maybe it'll be buffed to 11 provisions. Maybe it ends up being fine at 12 and better than a lot of people expect, including myself. I expect this to need another buff, but I would love to be wrong. Itchy nose. But it still does what Portal does. It's just the effect is weakened, but that opens up design space. They already mentioned a bunch of engines that were nerfed to 5 provisions because of Portal will now return to 4 provisions. And that's amazing. Because these are all cards that used to be playable, and then because of Portal, had to be nerfed and became unplayable because they're just not worth it for 5. But now they're going back to 4. So, I mean, maybe it won't be as impactful as I hope. It probably won't be, because my hopes are generally very high for Gwent, and even when they do well, they still don't live up to my expectations, and that's my fault, that's my problem. But you gotta look at the big picture. And when you're looking at the big picture, this is still a good card. The effect is still good, so it's just a matter of provisions and balancing it properly to make it playable if it's not already playable. The effect is still good, but it's changed. It's slightly weakened from its current form in order to allow a lot of other cards to reach playability again. And of course, if even with this change and the buff to 4 provisions, some of these cards still don't see play, then they can finally get some buffs. Please. So, yeah, like I can understand how people would be confused by this change and also upset. You know, I love Assimilate. I love crime decks. I love Portal in those. I play Assimilate with double Portal every now and then. Asira got buffed, so double Portal got buffed by 2 provisions. And the thing is, it still works. It's slightly weaker in its effect, but that's why it's cheaper. But it still works. It's still Portal. It's still good old Portal. It's Portal that's healthier for the game. That's the way I see it, though. And we all know that I'm not a pro player, and I'm not a card game expert. You know, I look at this and I see that this is a step in the right direction. I think it's a good change. But, you know, they could buff the provisions again. They could reduce the turn timer to 2, if need be. If it ends up being too weak. Numbers can be tweaked. At this point, it's a numbers game. And numbers can be tweaked. But you just gotta think of the effect, look at the big picture, and just think, alright, overall the effect is still the same. And with the appropriate number tweaks, they can get it to a playable point. A point where it's playable. They can do that. They can tweak the numbers. But just think about all the cards that can now become better because of this change. So, I hope that maybe cleared up some confusion about why this change is happening. And, you know, maybe it, you know, eased you down a little bit. Or eased your concerns a little bit regarding the card. I don't think it's going to be less playable than it has been. Because it's been, you know, generally regarded as a weak card for a while now. I don't think that it's going to see a less play. I think the decks that played it can still play it. I do think that there could be some new decks that can start playing it. And again, at this point, it's just a numbers game. They can tweak the numbers, make it a legit card. Legit. I've been talking a lot today. Legit card. They can make it a legit card. And now it has more nuance, which just makes it a more interesting card. It's nuance in a weaker way, but still good. I still love Portal. You know what? I love it more now than I did before. Like to me, like optimized power levels don't matter. The effect is still there in spirit. It's still fun. It still helps, you know, my favorite type of deck, engine decks. And it's now a more affordable card. It's easier to put in my decks. And, you know, that's what matters to me. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it cleared up some confusion. Maybe eased your minds a little bit. If not, I apologize. I mean, I understand why people can be upset about this. You know, and in a way, it's sad for me too. You know, I love Portal decks, I always have. But the way I see it, Portal decks can still exist. And potentially they can exist more than they already have. We'll see. Anyway, that does it for this video. I also have a video from today where I talk about the expansion. Just my general thoughts on it based on all the reveals we've gotten. And I go over some of the plans for decks that I have, or at least for the first week. And I'll have another video coming out later when we get the patch notes today, where I just talk about the balancing changes and, well, there aren't any reworks. Well, okay, slight reworks. Just all the changes to existing cards, except Portal, because I felt that could use a video of its own. But all the changes to existing cards will be covered in a separate video later today, and then tomorrow, expansion. And I plan on doing 2 videos featuring 2 different decks, and of course the regular amount of gameplay, just to get us started off on the right foot with Way of the Witcher. So, you know, like and subscribe, stay tuned for that, and I hope to see you again soon for more Gwent, Way of the Witcher content. Have a good one.